Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 861 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week across NXT and AEW, but not only that, this episode will serve as your ultimate preview for NXT Vengeance Day. We also have some WWE news to cover. And while I was originally going to spend a little bit of time talking TNA wrestling as well, when you combine the WWE stuff with the NXT Ultimate Preview and a decent amount of topics that we need to touch on for AEW, that's going to make the show a bit too long. So what we're going to do is next week, in this exact same space, it will be your AEW Revolution Ultimate Preview. Fingers crossed, there's no major news for us to cover at the start of the show. And if there is not, we will also talk about TNA on that episode. Again, the Revolution Ultimate Preview, NXT, and TNA. So we have a ton of content coming your way here at the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. You all know that is the case. As we get into today's show, you need to allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show. On YouTube, when you subscribe over there, you can listen to our episodes. You can also watch full-length video interviews. We do hope to have a couple more of those on this road to WrestleMania. And lastly, off the top, let me just remind you now,
I happen to love the number 5.
Hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. We are going to cover some items here at the start of the show. I hope to expand on them inside of 24 hours when we do our next news analysis post. Again, that's buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. You support us financially. We will keep delivering performance enhancing audio into your ear holes. Now, as I mentioned, we are going to be covering NXT and AEW on the show. We're actually going to flip the order of operations here. We're going to hit AEW off the top, NXT at the back end, because we do have, that ultimate preview, which is going to be the main event of this program. All of that, of course, is coming up.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
And we actually have 3 different WWE items to cover as we get into this episode. First, there were some significant WWE creative shakeups confirmed on Thursday. The most notable being Road Dogg Brian James leaving WWE from his significant role on the SmackDown side. James had been leading the creative operation. He was demoted a couple of months ago. Now he's out. And it's being reported that he left on his own accord. That kind of sounds like a save face move. He was given the opportunity to quit as opposed to get fired, but Getting Over cannot confirm as much at this time. We should have more information in our Friday update. The other change comes to the Raw side, as Alexandra Williams announced that she has been promoted to a vice president role, making her the lead writer for Monday Night Raw. She's been with the company for 5 years. If memory serves, I believe she's the first female lead writer in WWE history. That's a major step forward. She was already in her role for this Monday's Raw, so while it's tough to give her credit for that show entirely, it was the best of its kind since the start of the year, and perhaps that was among the reasons. As far as Road Dogg, look, his booking's been rough, pun not intended, for a while now. Not just this run, but when he was previously the lead writer for SmackDown under Vince McMahon. I thought it was so funny that when Doggy was brought back, AJ Styles actually went on social media and said, hey, give him a chance. It's different now than it was before, and yet the creative was equally shitty. Maybe not as bad, of course, because Paul Levesque is still running the show, but it was still pretty crappy under Doggy. It was astounding to me that Levesque put him back in that capacity at all. And as everyone listening knows, SmackDown was borderline unwatchable at times throughout 2025 with him in charge. No idea what he's going to do next. maybe TNA can be a soft landing spot for him. He would certainly improve their creative, even if he was struggling with the WWE main roster. I guess we will have to find out. Royce Keys not appearing on WWE TV outside of those really short interview clips that should be longer, as we've talked about, has become a serious topic of conversation amid a report that WWE is getting him used to their production and waiting for the right time to factor him into the product. Somehow, this is controversial. I cannot understand how or why. If WWE threw Keys onto TV and had him squash some jobbers for a couple months while otherwise being ignored, people would be up in arms about that. If Keys debuted and floundered a little bit, the same thing would hold true. The reality is that WWE has a bunch of creative plans in place for WrestleMania. It's making minor adjustments on the road as necessary, and it is difficult to throw someone with his presence onto screen if he's not going to have a notable role at Mania. And at this point, it does not seem like that's going to be the case. If you compare him to someone like Danhausen, who is mostly a comedy character and can be utilized in bits and burps here and there to kind of enhance a storyline or at least provide a little bit of comic relief, you're doing everyone, both of them and yourself, an injustice. Like, these are different people and different use cases, okay? But as I was thinking about this situation, I remembered my own career. When I first started at my current company, which is like 12 years ago at this point, they hired me as an employee, but they did not have a specific assignment for me. It was right in the middle of football season. They had me contribute here and there, and obviously I worked, but it was not until 3 to 6 months passed that I actually got my first assignment and my first leadership opportunity. And as I just said, I have now been at this company for more than a decade. It's a pretty interesting parallel to Keys if you put it in the context of employment. If WrestleMania passes and he's not on TV the following week, or maybe the week after that, let's say he's going to be a Raw superstar and the Raw after WrestleMania is too loaded, so they push it one more week. If he's not on WWE TV within 4 shows after WrestleMania, I will have some legitimate concerns. But that's just not going to happen. They have nearly 50 days until Mania. I think it's down to 45 or 44 as we tape this episode. And they need to book the 14, 15, or 16 matches that are going to be on that card. Once they get past that, they're going to be able to introduce new people. I'm thinking back to, I'm forgetting which WrestleMania it was, but I attended the Raw after WrestleMania by myself. Brian Campbell went home and some other people who I was with weren't around. I forget what city it was in. I want to say it was in New York, but it was when Bobby Lashley returned to WWE. Had they brought him back months earlier when he was signed, it wouldn't have made any sense. He would have had nothing to do for WrestleMania. They brought him back on the Raw after WrestleMania. It was a moment. People remembered it. And then they moved forward and booked Bobby Lashley. Now, of course, he got into the Sami Zayn sisters storyline and so on, but that was Vince McMahon. And again, under Paul Levesque, you can criticize him all you want for certain creative decisions. It's a night and day booking difference, WWE right now, than it was in the latter stages of the 2010s. I don't feel like discussing this other item on next Tuesday's WWE show, so let's just talk about it now and move along. But it's this ridiculous controversy surrounding Dragon Lee coming out of Raw. As you all saw, that match ended with Gunther ripping off Dragon's mask and his face being exposed for a split second before Gunther got his arms around his head. Now, it would have been nice if Dragon was facing the other direction, but unfortunately, the camera was right on him. Still, it was impossible to make out his face live. Impossible. And you know how I know that? Because I watched the clip back multiple times. I knew when the mask was getting ripped off, and I tried to look at his face to say, can I see this man's face? And I could not. The only way to actually make out his face would have been to freeze the footage at the exact frame and then take a screenshot. So coming out of Raw, I expected that fans would do that on social media. Fans. Just as they have for so many luchadors when stuff like that happens. What I did not expect was that any prominent names who report wrestling news, notice I am not using the capital J word there, I did not expect anyone to be so uncouth as to do that themselves for clicks, follows, and internet points. Well, that's exactly what happened. Here's what I tweeted Monday night. Quote, when a luchador loses his mask, every effort is made to cover his face as soon as possible. Sometimes it doesn't go perfectly. Just because that happens doesn't mean his face is fair game. Think of it like a wardrobe malfunction. Kayfabe may be dead, but we can still respect athletes and traditions. Now, if you disagree with that and you're listening to this show, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And I'm not telling you to stop listening. Please keep listening to the program. But if you disagree with that general, plain, baseline statement about lucha libre and the men who wear masks in that type of wrestling, women as well, then I don't know that what I'm going to say now going forward will convince you otherwise, because it's a base level of operations which all of us should have when covering and talking about professional wrestling. What became clear is that not only did that one wrestling reporter happily tweet out a picture of this guy's face, but another prominent reporter has since been defending that move and actually blaming WWE for doing the spot. A spot that has been done in WCW, AEW, TNA, CMLL, AAA, probably the Japanese promotions as well. Pretty much any promotion that has ever featured that type of match finish. This is a completely asinine conversation. Now, I don't need backup to know that my opinion is strong, true, and correct. But if I want to be on the same side as anyone in this conversation, it's Ernesto Ocampo, who has written about Mexican wrestling for 30 years and has been editor-in-chief of the Super Luchas magazine for 23 years. I'm not going to read you all of his tweets here. You can check out his profile and read them for yourselves. But he does sum it up with this one line, quote, "In wrestling journalism, it's a matter of ethics to help protect the identities of the masked wrestlers," unquote. That's all that needs to be said. Purposefully finding a split-second screenshot is disrespectful to the person and the industry. Ethics are not only about what you learn in school, and Ernesto, I'm assuming, myself, Vintage Chris Vanini, we actually went to journalism school. But ethics are not just about what they teach you in school. It's about understanding contextually what is and what is not fair game in the industry that you cover. And it's not about protecting a company or trade secrets or whatever the case may be. But it is understood when you are working with luchadors or when you are covering luchadors, there are unmaskings where the mask is removed and it's a stipulation. They lose the mask and their face is now known and revealed and exposed. And there are other situations where it is done either accidentally, which was not this case, or as part of a storyline where it's supposed to be an insult to that person, but their identity is still supposed to be shielded. This was that. And trying to show this man's face, Dragon Lee in this case, to, I don't know, prove that you can freeze frame something and screenshot it or get more followers or laugh at WWE or something. It's bad ethics. And it's frustrating to see that this has become a topic of conversation for 4 days and that so many people in the industry have actually been siding with the person who took the screenshot rather than the people who know what they're actually talking about. And I'm not talking about myself, the Silver King here. I'm talking about Ernesto Ocampo and people who cover Lucha Libre professionally. I just happen to agree with them and happen to have said it before them because I was reacting to it in the moment. So that's it. I just wanted to make sure that was said here on the podcast. Have a platform, I'm going to use it. You all know that. You've been listening to the show, many of you, for years upon years now. Let's kind of move away from all this and get to the professional wrestling of it all. As I mentioned, we're going to start with AEW. Then we will cover everything that happened on NXT not directly related to the forthcoming Premium Live event. And then at the end of the show, we will have your NXT Vengeance Day Ultimate Preview. There are timestamps in the episode description, so you can skip around if you so choose. As always, though, I hope you listen to the entire show. Interestingly, when it comes to AEW, I was unable to watch Dynamite. Like, I tried via YouTube TV where I record it. I went on to HBO Max. Wednesday's episode was not available on either of them, so I had to watch wrestling elsewhere. As such, it's possible I missed part of the show, but I obviously tried my absolute best to be as comprehensive as possible. 7 of 14 matches this week were storyline relevant. I saw one match listed on Cage Match, which was Hangman squashing a dude in 10 seconds. I didn't see it on Dynamite. So if that did happen, then it's 7 of 15, but let's just call it 50%. I was generous with at least one of them. This is 2 weeks out from their first pay-per-view since December, and AEW still can't hit 75% relevancy for 4+ hours of television. Let's go ahead and discuss everything that happened across Collision and Dynamite. On Collision, MJF opened the show screaming about the Revolution stipulation, demanding Tony Khan change it or else he would hold the show hostage. Kevin Knight came out instead, saying he's been stacking dubs, and now he's ready to shut MJF's crybaby bitch ass up. MJF stood in the corner, kind of laughing at Knight as he tried to insult him, called him a fat ass who is less handsome and lacks swagger. He spoke in the third person, calling himself the Jet every single time he started a sentence. It was a really bad rip-off Rock impersonation. The lines weren't terrible. The delivery was rough, kind of transparent what he was trying to do. MJF attempted to get over his big Hebrew moniker, and for some reason, he offered Knight a title match so he could teach him a lesson. Why would this not be an eliminator? Knight lost to Swerve Strickland a month ago, and since he's only beaten losers, Scorpio Sky, Mansoor, Hangman Page, and others fought this supposed star-studded mini-tournament to crown a number one contender, yet a guy in Knight, who is partners with Page, mind you, can just go out there and get a match? In a vacuum, this segment was borderline good. The booking, though, was mind-numbing, completely nonsensical. On Collision, Proto-Kata beat Top Flight, considering Kazuchika Okada and Kyle Fletcher are well-built singles champions. This match going 10 minutes was kind of ridiculous. Fletcher is still telling people to say his full name, which, as I've said before, does not make any sense, and no one responds when he says it. He said they're an unstoppable tag team, and they welcome all challengers. Jet Speed, who are trios champions, mind you, they answered. Fans chanted bitch because Fletcher said it for Okada. Knight said he wanted to fight Okada for the AEW title after he wins it, and he seemed to say he also wanted the international title, and Mike Bailey wants the TNT title. It got a bit convoluted. And then Mike Bailey challenged them to find a third to fight for their trios titles, even though the entire point of Proto-Kata was for them to be a tag team. They wanted to fight two people, but the babyfaces come out and say, find a third, fight us, and we'll put our titles on the line. It's just so all over the place, right? So then on Dynamite, you have the AEW title on the line, MJF retaining against Kevin Knight in 17 minutes, obviously. I'm going to 4 stars A- here. The finish prevented it from getting a little higher. When Knight hit his UFO finisher, MJF kicked the referee in the hip, throwing him into the ropes where he sold a neck. That led to a heavily delayed near fall. A bit silly, sure. Pretty damn inventive, though. MJF then got double knees up to block a second UFO, adding a somewhat rough heat seeker for the win. It's fair to question MJF needing to go to those lengths just to beat a youngster and then barely escaping a relative neophyte when he has this huge title match scheduled against a much better and more accomplished opponent 11 days later. Bailey superkicked MJF after the bell, and it looked like he was going to go after Knight with his title. But ultimately, he didn't because Speedball stopped him. On Dynamite, Hangman Page cut a promo saying he's putting his career on the line to teach MJF a lesson, but given the stipulation, he will not enter the match with a conscience. MJF came out to talk shit back to him when out of nowhere, Fletcher, Okada, and Mark Davis attacked Page. Jet Speed saved. Don Callis then came out, called them greedy for wanting 3 singles titles, and then informed them that they were defending the trio straps in the main event of the show. Now, remember, please, Khan is the man in charge, a babyface authority figure. But he gave this heel manager a trios title match for no reason, a bout that involves a guy in Knight who already wrestled for the AEW title in the opening match of the show. Commentary told us this was a 3rd world championship match on the show. There's 2 world championships in AEW. There's the men's title and the women's title. These are not. If this was booked for Collision, I'd have been cool with it. It progressed nicely, 3-show storyline. You have it at the end. And then you talk about something that Vintage Chris Vanini brings up all the time, champions challenging for other titles when there's a massive roster and plenty of other talent that needs opportunities, and that gets you frustrated too. Booking it in the main event, given the context I provided, I found to be silly. Again, if you saved it for Collision because Knight was injured and so on, to me it would have made more sense. So the main event was the trios titles. Proto-Kata and Davis beat Jet Set Rodeo to win the championships. Knight sold injured taped ribs earlier in the match. Hangman took Davis down with Deadeye. Speedball had a great reversal into a Poison Rana. easily the spot of the match. Say what you want about Bayley, the guy can work. It's always a pleasure to watch him wrestle, especially when he's not doing those dumb kicks. MJF attacked Hangman ringside, I believe with the Dynamite Diamond ring. That allowed Okada to hit a Rainmaker on Knight, who subsequently took a pile driver from Davis to switch the straps. The MJF involvement explained why Callis family came to his aid in the earlier segment. I had been frustrated about that live, but it made a lot of sense by the time the finish ran and the titles changed. What's not sensible is why the trios titles are on this group, which is comprised of 2 other singles champions. The Callis family has 63 members, but these guys have to get double strapped up after Hangman was already a double champion, after Samoa Joe was already a double champion. It's insane booking logic to me. Use other people on your roster and build them up while your champions are champions for their titles. The match was great. 4 stars A-, borderline 4.25 stars A. It was the best bout of the week for AEW, but the titles basically went from champion to champion again. On Collision, Death Riders beat Don Callis family in the 82nd 6-man or more match between these factions. Konosuke Takeshita came out briefly to brawl with Jon Moxley and hug each other after the bell. The side separated them, but didn't erupt into a huge brawl, even though they all hate each other. The brawl was somehow worse than the match. It's time to admit that this is Vince McMahon late 2010s WWE booking at this point. Every week, the same match in the same spot. There has been no depth added to the feud this entire time. The storyline was extremely thin to start, and now the matches just keep repeating over and over again. Even if you are an AEW diehard, you've got to admit this has become ridiculous and beyond the pale. On Collision, Toni Storm squashed Zeta Steel. Marina Shafir attacked her after. When Storm got the upper hand, Wheeler Yuta came in to change the numbers game, but she ripped off his beanie, revealing his bald head, and he ran scurrying into the crowd. Just to clarify, we saw him get his head shaved live. His heel faction not only stood around watching it, but they held his hand. But now he's scared to show his head and he's running away when it's exposed. Not for nothing, Yuta looks 1,000 times better without the mop on his head, by the way. On Dynamite, Mox beat Hechicero in a Continental Championship Eliminator match. No reason for this happening. More of the same, Mox just randomly fighting someone, though it did not open the show this time. He won with Death Rider. When the whole faction did its walkout for the match, Shafir dared Storm to come find her in the least convincing way possible. Mox called Callis a pussy into the camera afterward. Takeshita showed up and Mox left the ring. On Dynamite, Death Riders got a group promo where Daniel Garcia yelled Yuta removed his hood, expecting a reaction to the bald head. He got nothing from the crowd. And Marina literally called Tony a pussy. One sentence. So 2 segments, both involving the Death Riders. They are so freaking edgy because they use the word pussy. Mox then said there's nobody in wrestling like them. You know what, Mox? That is true. There is nothing in wrestling like your faction. On Collision, Clark Connors got a brief vignette that was shot really well and it was decently interesting. Unfortunately, it only lasted 30 seconds, so we as viewers ultimately learned almost nothing about him. AEW does this all the time. They seem to make an effort to achieve something, but they cut it so short that it ultimately has no value. If this had gone 2-ish minutes, it probably would have been great. Darby Allin later cut a screaming promo at Gabe Kidd, mentioning for the 100th time the car crash with his uncle and saying for the 20th time that he won't be pushing up daisies, which has been used in every single segment of this feud. Orange Cassidy sat there chilling. AEW, they gotta find a way for Darby to stop being so one note. On Dynamite, Darby and Orange beat the Dogs. That's the name they're going by. The Dogs. These guys who were previously the War Dogs. They could not have come up with another name involving dog. They just said the Dogs, really. That's what we're doing. There was an awesome spot in this match. Steel steps were placed by the timekeeper's area. Connors ran up the steps, speared Cassidy downward into a table. Probably the single best spot of the week in AEW. Darby took a fall over the ropes where he landed directly on his head and neck, right on the ring apron. He literally held his head in his hands. It clearly hurt him. Not only was there no stoppage, he wrestled the rest of the match. He's lucky he didn't seriously injure himself. I'm not trying to draw the WWE AEW comparison. We have seen already twice this year WWE stop matches just out of concern for a concussion. Things that we wouldn't even notice watching the show live. This guy fell on his head and neck in such a disgusting manner. Like, I thought he was done for. Like, he was like, I hate to, again, draw the comparison, like Big E-esque. Like, I thought they were going to wheel him out of there. And he held his head on the ground and just kept going. I couldn't believe what I saw. Darby hit a coffin drop with both heels ringside before Orange Punch ended it with a 1-2-3 on Connors. So you sign with AEW, you debut, and then you lose. It'd be funny if it wasn't so sad. That said, Darby and Orange, they're an interesting team, and this was a really intense match. David Finlay debuted after the bell, attacking the faces from behind with a shillelagh. He was in the War Dogs with these guys previously in New Japan, decided to work in AEW rather than go to NXT with his brother and father. The Dogs stood tall together in the end. So the faces won, but the feud is continuing because they're going to need to find a third, I assume Mark Briscoe. It's kind of crazy to bring in another group extremely similar to Death Riders, Don Callis family, Bang Bang Gang. And it's quite something to think that AEW has signed, 16 to 18 people over the last 2 months. And a lot of them are, they look and act quite similar. It's like when WWE built up MFT and they just kept adding people who didn't really matter and didn't move the needle. Now, there is a Tama Tonga equivalent here, meaning a guy who has a chance to make it out of the group and shine on his own. But otherwise, do these guys raise the rent? Do they put butts in seats? They're getting people to tune into the show. Do you really need to bring in more New Japan talent when the people who watch New Japan are already watching your product? It's just, it makes you scratch your head. Storm checked on Cassidy later backstage, which was odd because Alan wasn't there and she's involved in a completely different feud. On Collision, Chris Statlander and Thunder Rosa beat Sisters of Sin. Rosa won with a little package bomb after Saturday Night Fever. It was during this match and promotion of the Thekla title bout that I realized Thunder was only brought back as an undeserving challenger because they're working Texas. So transparent. I don't know how I didn't realize it ahead of time. I guess they thought she was going to sell tickets. They wound up papering, giving up free tickets for the El Paso Dynamite. I mean, MJF this week, I was going to do this in the news segment. Let me just give you a quick aside here. MJF does interviews and he talks shit about WWE, and it's okay because it's his character and he's usually very good at it and he's funny. But he gave an answer in some interview that, you have to sell a kidney or your firstborn or something to go to a WWE show. And frankly, nothing he said is false. Those tickets are ridiculously expensive to the point that if I had to go and pay for a WWE ticket, I probably would not, unless tickets fell really close to when the event started. But his point was, our show is affordable and you can go see us without doing those things. And to a degree, fair enough. The tickets are less expensive for AEW. But the reason the tickets are less expensive is not because Tony Khan is the patron saint of billionaires who is happy to make wrestling affordable for fans. It's because the laws of supply and demand. Demand for WWE tickets is really high, so they've jacked up their prices, just like demands for concerts and sporting events are really freaking high. So all of these teams and leagues and individuals are jacking up their prices. The fact is, demand for AEW tickets is low, which is why you can get into a show for $20, $25. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't change the quality of the product, but it is a fact. There's a reason why AEW for TV is running much smaller venues, or when they do run a large venue like they did for Dynamite, I think capacity was like 10,000, 11,000. They're putting 3,500 people in there, and they had 2,800, and then they had to paper. They went to the college and gave out tickets and then said, if you take one for free, you can buy another one for $10. Again, I'm not shaming them. It's okay. You want to put butts in seats, and you want to expand your product, but you can't be doing that and then simultaneously having your champion go on TV or wherever that interview happened and then kind of talk shit about the competition. People are so into WWE. The demand is so high. Their tickets are expensive. Ours is so low. You can get in for basically nothing. I mean, it doesn't really work when you do that. Okay, I digress. Let me get back to what I was talking about here. Thekla came out on Collision and repeated what she said last week, calling them dumb bitches. Her promo was actually the strongest part of Collision. So much confidence, so much poise. She came across like a true champion, saying the faces were the past, she's the present and the future. It's tough not to agree with her, considering Rosa was just thrown in there, and Stat has been booked terribly going into the title reign. She won some big matches as champion, credit where it's deserved. But then her booking coming out of it too has been horrendous. So on Dynamite, you had the women's title. Thekla obviously retained over Rosa. The champion won with a pair of stomps, which for her character, I would just prefer a flashier finish. It was a thorough victory over 10 minutes. Thunder looked decent for being out so long. She never should have been a challenger for this title, as we've said before. Stat came out after the bell, got held back by security, And then Thekla hit a third stomp on Rosa. So Stat went after her, still couldn't get to her. A little convoluted. On Dynamite, FTR and the Young Bucks had a taped sit-down confrontation at a boardroom table with a no-touch clause. Renee Paquette was there for no reason whatsoever. FTR wanted to beat the Bucks so they could, guess what, maintain their claim as the best ever since they already took down the Briscoes multiple times. The Bucks said they want to kill FTR for attacking their family, and then the segment just ended. I could not care less about this. Seriously, could not care less. On Dynamite, Brody King came out to the ring. He said that he doesn't need to be like Swerve Strickland, talking about being the most dangerous man in AEW. He knows he's the most dangerous man in AEW. Bro, you're literally on the mic saying the thing that you said you don't need to say.
No, don't like that.
So Prince Nana came out, did a fake laugh, introduced Swerve, whose new theme is literally just most dangerous, repeating. Swerve attacked him from behind with a chain and hit house call. Then he wrapped the chain around Brody's neck, choked him in the ropes, hung him over the top. Even though King was just kind of chilling on his knees, Swerve barked at him and said he would send the same message to King that he sent to Kenny Omega. AEW is absolutely obsessed with hanging people in and over the ropes right now. It's almost like this company goes through phases. Excessive blood phase, stabbing phase, stapler phase. Now it's choking and hanging. As is the case with WWE debuting a new Titantron or theme for a person who's about to win a title. They did it twice last week with Miles Bourne and the Irresistible Forces over on SmackDown. Swerve's new theme gives away that he's going to win this feud. Plus, it would be nonsensical to put Brody over him. Swerve is a far bigger star. The segment was decent. It was ridiculously over the top. On Collision, Andrade El Idolo beat Tomohiro Ishii in a 14-minute main event. It was easily the match of the night, 3.75 stars B+. Too bad it had zero storyline relevance or value. Andrade landed his double moonsault, hit his back elbow, and then the message to win. Ishii is now 0-17 in AEW singles matches. 0-17, winless over 6 years working part-time for this company. So not only does AEW take a ton of talent from New Japan, the few who they don't completely steal away, they never let win anything. Bandito confronted after the bell for a non-storytelling stare down, considering there's no reason to add anything to a pay-per-view match they booked purely for work rate. Bandito and Andrade then did a brief interview segment backstage at Dynamite. Bandito said he watched Andrade growing up, so it's a dream match for him. Andrade said he heard Bandito was great, but he seems to just want a selfie. I mean, there's not even half of an effort to create a storyline here. They have a concept with the once a fan gimmick, but they aren't even bothering to do something interesting with it. What an absolute waste. On Collision, the Inspiration got a promo package that featured footage from their house show debut in Australia. They expressed anger that the Brawling Birds came out to confront them that night. And that was like 2 weeks ago at this point. Longer. Anyway, that led to a Dynamite match. First, on Collision, the Birds beat a couple jobbers in 3 minutes with their heart attack finisher. Really awkward move. Alex Windsor held the woman too high. Jamie Hayter hit her lariat to like her belly button almost. It was just kind of strange. Then on Dynamite, the Birds beat Inspiration in 100 seconds. So the jobbers got 3 minutes. Inspiration got 100 seconds. Inspiration got attacked from behind while dancing. The Birds dominated them from there. I don't believe anyone even went behind the ropes to like start a tag team match. So just to be clear, Inspiration debuted on a house show, got held off TV for weeks, then got completely squashed in their TV debut, losing in half the time it took the Birds to beat a couple jobbers just days before. I don't mind that Inspiration was beaten handily by a team that's being built up to be a title challenger. After all, half their gimmick is comedy. But to squash them that handily in their debut after not having them show up on TV in Australia and then sidelining them between those two appearances, when you have at least 2 other jobber teams who could have taken that loss, that is just rough booking. And it did absolutely nothing for the Birds, who need victories over real formidable teams to be title challengers. If they built up the Inspiration and gave them a win or two and noted that they were TNA Knockouts champions, or if you don't want to say the promotion, multi-time tag team champions at major American promotions, and then you have the Birds go over them, they could claim a number 1 contendership. Instead, they made Inspiration look like an absolute joke.
You're gonna be joking me, because out there, that was the real joke. That was the real joke.
On Collision, Tommaso Ciampa beat Jay Lethal. There was a video package recalling some of their history, which added a level of interest to the match, but didn't really create a reason for it actually happening randomly on this show. Ciampa really went from super over, winning the TNT title, to being off TV fighting Lethal then in a random 8-minute match. That's absolutely crazy. Ciampa cut a rant promo on Dynamite saying Fletcher is hiding from him in the tag team and trios matches because he knows once they fight again one-on-one that Ciampa will win the TNT title back. Ciampa said that he's willing to earn the rematch because he joined AEW not just to have good matches, but to be a top guy, which is a pretty interesting take. So FTR interrupted for a seemingly random stare down that instead saw the heels hug Ciampa and welcome him to AEW. Dax Harwood suggested he could truly become a top guy in AEW by joining them. Kind of interesting. I don't see Johnny Gargano leaving WWE because he's actively being booked in a new gimmick over there. So maybe Ciampa teams up with like Briscoe against them because I can't imagine Ciampa actually works with FTR. That would be pretty silly. On Collision, Hook randomly approached some dude behind a building asking if he wanted to join the Ops, then calling him an idiot for thinking that he could. Anthony Bowens then approached Hook wanting to join the Ops because even though people don't know this, he's been one of his best friends this entire time. Then he ran down his resume, which Hook would have known if they were best friends, so why did he need to say it? Hook wondered whether Bowens is a proper fit for them because they're all killers, and Bowens doesn't really seem to be. Now, Hook's acting was poor. He has no intonation in his voice. Everything he says sounds exactly the same, monotone, but this is the most he's ever spoken. It's the most character he's ever shown. That's a positive sign, so it's at least a step in the right direction. So yeah, that's AEW this week. Next week is going to be the go-home for Revolution. We'll have the full Ultimate preview here on the show. It really just felt like a wasted week in many ways, just kind of kicking the can down the road. I have a feeling it's going to be, typical AEW where they just suddenly shove 8 more matches on the card between, I guess, Collision on Saturday and then Dynamite, next week. Same bat time, same bat channel on Wednesday. As of right now, you have the AEW Championship, MJF defending against Hangman Page in a Texas death match, where if Hangman loses, it's his word, apparently, not a stipulation, that he'll never challenge for the AEW title. You have Swerve Strickland and Brody King fighting over who's the most dangerous person in AEW. There's at least some storyline there, but it's thin. You have Bandito against Andrade El Idolo with no storyline whatsoever. Jon Moxley defending the Continental Championship against Konosuke Takeshita in a no time limit match. So they removed one of the unique stipulations that comes with the Continental Championship. Now, that's okay because it's going to be an awesome match, but still, it's something like they did. It seems like we're going to get Thekla against Chris Statlander, the women's title back on the line in a 2 out of 3 falls match. I don't believe this was announced on TV. They just said it on social media. They're also going to do another trios title match with the new champions defending against Jet Speed and Mystico, who's being added to the match for whatever reason. I mean, they have a trio with Hangman who's in a match, so why are you running this on the show? The answer is to get Okada and Fletcher on the show. It's unbelievable. And then the tag team title match, FTR defending against the Young Bucks in something that should have a stipulation the way this has been booked, but does not have a stipulation. So that is the card. The 7 matches already announced. When you combine, additional main card matches and a couple pre-show matches, it does feel like there'll be 7, 8 more added. And, we'll be discussing everything right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast in 1 week's time. Let's move over to NXT. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about everything that happened on the show, not directly related to Vengeance Day. And then we'll, of course, give you the NXT Vengeance Day Ultimate preview. 1 week after I sang NXT's praises to high heaven, this week was a massive step down. Apparently, I was more annoyed with some segments and results than other people who were watching. I got some feedback that, I might be out on an island on a couple of these takes, but, I'll go through them as always, and you guys can let me know what you think. Women's Championship, JC Jane defending against Zarya. In the parking lot before the show, Zarya refused comment on her Sol Ruka attack, saying anyone who needs to ask doesn't understand. JC backstage expressed confidence that Zarya would not get a clean chance at winning the title because Sol Ruka almost certainly wants revenge, and if not, the rest of Fatal Influence would get her back. At the bell of the main event, Jane was looking around, confused why Ruka was not there to interfere. Influence saved JC from eating a ringside spear, with Zarya throwing herself into the steel steps. Zarya dominated from there, landing a superplex and some German suplexes after the break. Jane countered a spear with a huge pump knee. Zarya ducked rolling encore, landed a spear. JC escaped Zone of Destruction and landed her finisher, but both women were way too spent to cover or try to finish the match. That's when Sol finally ran down, took out both Influence members with ease, and then ran into the ring for a double Soul Snatcher and a no contest finish. She held up the women's title, grabbed Zarya's head, kissed her on the forehead, repeating, "Your soul is mine, bitch." She really came across like a heel here. And I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to speak it into reality. That's how she came across. Like, this is a woman who has put Zarya as second the entire time they've been together. Zarya finally stands up for herself. And the best Ruka can do is screw out of the title and repeat the same phraseology that she used 1 week later. This moment was not as hot for me as it should have been. The match shockingly lacked energy at points, and the Soul Snatcher, completely missing Zarya, but Zarya selling it anyway, was rough, particularly from the camera angle that was used. The hit rate on the Soul Snatcher is never going to be 100%, especially involving two competitors, but she needs an alternate impressive move because they are completely running this into the ground where it's no longer impressive or shocking, especially when it misses. They got to be smarter about the utilization of Soul Snatcher. This also seemed to indicate a triple threat is going to be the plan for Stand and Deliver. Inserting JC into a best friends breakup storyline is odd. She's the champion. Both want her title. Okay. But their beef is primarily with one another. That should be resolved separately from any championship situation. After pitch perfect execution in this storyline last week, Tuesday night left something to be desired, especially because it was basically a purposeful repetitive finish. It is interesting, though, that Zaruka are kissing each other as enemies when they weren't doing that as friends. If they do run the triple threat, they gotta have Ruka win the title. She needs an avenue to develop an actual personality and character, at least as a tweener, if not a heel. Zarya can work her way back into title contention, finally beat Soul, then Ruka can get called up to the main roster. But while she's awesome and athletic and obviously good looking, Soul is just not there yet in the character department. You guys know I have said this exact same thing about NXT superstars in the past. I said it about Roxanne Perez. I was 1,000% correct. I said it about Trick Williams. I was 1,000% correct. And it's been the case with many people. Soul is the next in that line. I understand they want to rush her up to main. They absolutely should not do it. She needs at least another 3 or 4 months, better yet 6, 9, or 12 in NXT, so that when she comes up to the main roster, she's a fully formed product. Miles Bourne opened the show in a suit. His new theme hits nicely, lyrics and everything. Bourne said he's not just going to soak up the adulation with his sob story. Instead of thanking his family, friends, and fans, he thanked his biggest doubter, Ethan Page, for teaching him that he lacked a necessary killer instinct. Bourne said he's become a demon and asked, "Can you hear me now?" Page interrupted, accepting the appreciation but wanting payback with a rematch. Robert Stone came out to delay it, but the guys decided they wanted to wrestle in their slacks, dress shoes, and everything. And Stone's like, "Okay, go ahead." I am not sure I've ever seen two guys agree to fight like this when they're both in suits. Sometimes one guy in a suit, but not two. Page's pants got ripped at the leg, so he pulled off Bourne's belt to use it. The referee took the belt away, so Page used his own, wrapped around his hand, right to the face, sucker punch. Bourne avoided Twisted Grim, countering into an ankle lock, only for Page's pants to come off at the break. When the referee moved the pants out of the ring, Bourne took off his shoe, smacked Page across the face, and retained the North American Championship. This was basically a male bra and panties match, or I guess a tuxedo match from back in the day. Page was awesome and effective during it. He sold the clothes getting ripped and such. He was very funny. End of the day, this match just did not need to happen. I gotta presume, or I did at least in the moment, that this was a write-off for Page, given the comedy aspects and the easy loss. Otherwise, I have no idea why they ran back a much worse version of a good main event match from last week. You don't book someone like this if you're going to elevate them back into the main event scene. Bourne's opening promo was pretty solid. He's still trying to find his comfort level there, but this was one of his better efforts. Kudos to him for that. Later backstage, Bourne thanked Charlie Dempsey and Tavian Heights for their help in NQCC getting him to this point. Dempsey demurred that Bourne is thriving while they are struggling. Birthright stepped in again, trying to recruit Dempsey, pointing out their recent success. Heights heavily protested, saying there's no way Dempsey can listen to Lexis King. This has been running for so long, it's starting to seem like Dempsey won't ultimately join. Not sure if he really fits with the heel group anyway. I remain curious to see how this develops, but it is time to shit or get off the pot with it moving forward. You can't do this recruitment thing every week. Ricky Saints and Vanity Project tried to console Page backstage, saying that they've been out there getting his back, or they would have been, I should say, if they knew that match was going to happen. Saints told Vanity, focus on taking care of your business. Then he put over Page for being in the record books after his title reign. He was confident both would win their titles back. Before ending his pep talk, the Page was rather catatonic until the end, when he gave Saints a side eye, possibly over the NXT title. Okay, maybe Paige is not getting called up imminently. It makes the booking even stranger unless they're running back the ego lost his smile gimmick and he's about to destroy another youngster. What I would guess is they're going to use Paige as fodder to put over the champion, whether that's Joe Hendry or Saints, and then they're going to call him up to the main roster. But again, I would not have put him in this tuxedo-ish match in a loss to Bourne if I was going to use him even once more in the main event of NXT. Saints, Vanity, and Paige, they remain incredible as a 5-way pairing. They all fit together so well. Ricky has found his character over the last couple of weeks since he started working with them. If Paige does get called up, Saints taking over as the house dad of the group, it makes a lot of sense. That could be why they have been all integrated together in this manner over the last few weeks, almost as a handoff from Paige to Saints with Vanity. Hank and Tank and Shiloh Hill fought Vanity Project. They all brawled into the commercial break, necessitating a match reset coming out of it. Keanu Carver threatened Booker T ringside, telling him to ensure his boy keeps his name out of his mouth. I suppose he was talking about Jasper Troy, but I didn't recall Troy ever saying Carver's name. Swipe right, trapped Tank in the ring apron, pushing the steel steps up against his body as he took a running dropkick to the back of the dome. Great spot. The Faces went on a huge run after the break, and Hill ultimately beat Jackson Drake, the Evolve champion, with a pop-up neck breaker. The Faces worked extremely well together, running a high-energy match with some hard slams. The truth is that Hill and Tank would make an awesome team. Hank is not really necessary here. This was actually the match of the night. High B, low B+. I mean, it was really solid. Ren Sinclair beat Nikita Lyons by submission in a speed match, winning with cattle mutilation, which she calls the final wrench.
Thank you!
Sinclair avoided a split from Lyons on the ring apron, only to take a roundhouse kick to the dome back inside, ultimately moving into that submission. Great move, great name for the move. See, it's not so hard when some modicum of thought is put into a finishing move. Still can't get my girl more than 5 minutes of wrestling to herself, of course, but at least she didn't lose to Nikita. Her first singles win, I want to say, since a Great American Bash in 2024. You can do that math yourself. That's insane. I might have required commitment to an insane asylum if she lost this match, just so everyone is aware. Credit to Lyons for losing a bunch of weight, allowing her to move around a lot better in the ring. I still don't see huge upside for her, largely because of her strange way of speaking, not just the tone of her voice, which is weird on its own, but literally how words come out of her mouth. It's like scatterbrained and real odd, but at least she's healthy and now able to give this a legitimate shot, so good for her. And if she does make it work, she'll deserve all the credit. Ren taking the title off Fallon Henley would be the best and worst case scenario simultaneously. Best case because she'd finally get some type of push and Fallon would no longer be saddled with the stupid title. Worst case because it's a stupid title, completely meaningless, and winning it probably keeps Sinclair away from wrestling longer, more important matches, including being in the mix for the North American Championship. Beggars can't be choosers. So I guess better Ren win as it benefits both of them, gets Fallon away from it, gives Ren something to do. Ilya LaFleur, Shawn Legacy, and Eli Knight all commiserated backstage about their recent work since getting brought over to NXT. Jasper Troy interrupted, his stupid chains literally clanking before he even walked in the picture, saying he wanted his title back. Josh Briggs inserted himself into the conversation, saying Troy isn't even the best big man in NXT. Instead of taking issue with Briggs, Troy challenged Legacy and Knight to a speed number 1 contendership. This was an idiotic segment for an idiotic title that should not exist. The Speed Championship has only been relevant in tournament settings. They just ran the first triple threat ever last week. Now there's going to be another triple threat for a number 1 contendership. Is it a speed match? Is it 7 minutes again? Why would the guy in Troy not go after Briggs for shit-talking him and instead fight the 2 neophytes who are much smaller than him? I cannot wait for creative to wake up and end this garbage. It is absolutely killing me.
Now go home and smoke some more crack.
All right, so that was NXT, everything that didn't necessarily apply directly to the Premium Live event. Let's move into our NXT Vengeance Day Ultimate Preview. Now, this is actually a 5-match card, and all of these had build coming out of this week's NXT. Tony D'Angelo against Dion Lennox. Dark State was threatening in the parking lot, waiting for D'Angelo. Robert Stone forced them inside literally seconds before Tony D pulled up and took a crowbar out of his trunk. Osiris Griffin was found attacked backstage, leading Dark State to freak out, wanting D'Angelo's blood. Dion Lennox appeared in the ring, calling out D'Angelo, so he showed up in the crowd, speaking without any bass in his voice, as if his balls hadn't dropped or something. It was really odd because he's spoken one way for years in NXT, and then he comes out here and he's kind of talking like this a little bit. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? D'Angelo promised to complete his vengeance and destroy Dark State by taking Lennox out. Dion said he'd be fighting for all 4 of his guys, and Tony was just a speed bump for him to run over on his way to the main event at Stand and Deliver. Lennox said he'd be looking to take out D'Angelo on site. He would wait for him in the parking lot, so he better be ready. Now, this was never called, I don't believe, a parking lot brawl, so I don't know if they're going to fight in the parking lot, move into the ring, and then they're just going to ring the bell. It's going to be a regular match, or if it's going to be a street fight of some kind. They didn't really clarify that. So right now, I'm not sure what direction they're going. The segment was fine. It's certainly one of the better go-home segments we're about to discuss. The problem is there's no real heat to this feud because most of it is completely contrived. Dark State didn't do anything to D'Angelo where his bloodlust makes sense, and none of the 4 Dark State guys, particularly Lennox, who has moved into this leadership role without doing any leading, they're not built to the level where this is some kind of notable PLE match. In fact, I don't believe it was announced for the card until this segment happened. I wouldn't even book this as an NXT TV main event, let alone a match on a show like this. Further frustrating here is that D'Angelo's whole mission was to take out these guys one by one, but all of them are still on TV. So yeah, he squashed Cutler James. He was there this week. He attacked Griffin. Maybe he took him out. But again, James is still standing. He didn't even address Saquon Sugars at all. So this is the end of the road. It's being booked as the end of the road, despite him not taking the entire journey. These guys should be taken out one by one by one. That way, the only people left are D'Angelo and Lennox. And if he beats Lennox, he's defeated all of them and he can move on. He doesn't have to beat them all in matches, but he should be taking them out and ensuring that they can't get involved here. So if there is a stipulation, then D'Angelo is outnumbered 4-on-1. If there's not a stipulation, he's still outnumbered 4-on-1. They're going to have to get ejected from ringside. But Dark State is this anti-authority group. So even if they get ejected, they should still get involved in the match. So D'Angelo should not be winning. But the only way to end this is for D'Angelo to win and probably move into the main event picture. It's real frustrating how they've booked his return. They could have done it so much better. In terms of a prediction for this match, I did forget to mention off the top that we're not just going to break down every single match on the NXT Vengeance Day card. We'll give you, predictions and projections on what's going to happen going forward. But my prediction for this match has to be D'Angelo. I don't see how you can have Lennox win this and D'Angelo have any footing in this entire brand going forward. So it has to be D'Angelo. And I don't know what they're going to do with him moving forward, but if he's winning this and he says he only has one more objective, that objective has to be the NXT Championship. You have Joe Hendry as champion, Ricky Saints as a challenger, Ethan Page possibly hanging around that scene. Are you going with a 4-way for Stand and Deliver? I mean, maybe. We'll have to find out. Lola Vice is going to fight Kalani Jordan in an NXT Underground match. Jordan visited a dojo to train with Shayna Baszler. Baszler was not having any of her BS. She was proving that her gymnastics background won't help her when it comes to mat wrestling. And then Lonnie got one kick in on Shayna, and the whole thing was over. This was a tremendous concept, executed terribly. D-level acting, C-level scripting. It maybe lasted 90 seconds at most, probably less. Not long enough nor gritty enough to be believable. Way too polished. And it was such a shame because when it started, I thought they had something here. Instead, it was a total waste of time. Are we really supposed to believe that Lonnie spent 5 minutes with Shayna, a legitimate MMA champion and trailblazer, got one kick on her, and now she's ready to go up against Lola?
Come on, Oos. It's a joke, right? It's a joke, Oos. You ribbing me?
Vice, apparently earlier in the day, Tuesday, was diagnosed with an oblique fracture in her hand. The doctor suggested she remove herself from action and immobilize the hand, as wrestling would put her at risk of either missing action for 6 months or even loss of function with permanent deformity. Despite hearing all of this, Lola, who's like in her 20s, said she's the most reliable woman in WWE, so she needs to wrestle. She signed paperwork clearing the doctors and NXT of any liability and promised to protect herself and return after the match. This was similarly poor, but by comparison, it was better than what we got with Lonnie. There was no reason for both of these to not be better, considering every bit of and everything, script, setting, acting, whatever the case in Orlando, the WWE has at its disposal. And yes, I'm taking into account that this is NXT and it's developmental, and there have been many corny segments in the past, totally. But both of these were so freaking corny and poorly acted that they stood out even beyond those. I mean, we had silly mafia segments with the D'Angelo family that were more realistic than this. In terms of the match, I mean, look, Lonnie already beat Lola straight up via submission on TV. That is what led to the NXT Underground stipulation. This is Lola's match type, basically, in this brand. You cannot have her lose this match to Lonnie and then be taken seriously at all moving forward. So Lola Vice has to win in NXT Underground. The North American Championship will be defended Izzy Dame against Tatum Paxley. Paxley and Dame sat together in the culling lair, looking at Tatum's old dollhouse. She said Izzy joining the culling gave her the control that she wanted, while Dame wondered whether Paxley has actually changed considering how she cost herself the North American title opportunity by letting Dame kind of take it from her. Izzy said Tatum is the reason she and Lyra Valkyria both left her, because she's pathetic, an unlovable person with no purpose or meaning. Dame said Paxley has not changed and she's incapable of being fixed, but Tatum smiled, saying pain is only temporary and it will be more satisfying to take the North American title from Izzy than it was winning the NXT Championship. She closed by saying, quote, "I was never meant to be played with," alluding to her dolls. Dame then knocked over them in the house out of frustration. This was way better than the Lonnie and Lola segments we just discussed. It still left a little bit to be desired. There's something about Izzy cutting promos that irks me to no end. It's just so unnatural for her. But this was much better because she only said a couple lines at a time and her words were really cutting to Paxley. Tatum being saddled with carrying the segment, it was tough. Both of them just kind of repeated things they were saying before. A go-home segment should really up the ante in some way. These two are involved in a blood feud, but there's no stipulation. It rang hollow, but Paxley did well individually. She always does when it comes to character work. As I've said before, this feud never needed a championship to be relevant. And putting the North American title on Izzy made absolutely no sense when there was a better option, which was Blake Monroe winning it back from Thea Hale and resuming whatever she was supposed to be doing beforehand. This is a really tough prediction because, as we've talked about for weeks now, Tatum is coming off of being the NXT Women's Champion. So you're going to give her that title and then knock her down an entire rung by having her beat Izzy Dame, who just got strapped up and really hasn't had any defenses. This is the one match on the show where not only do I not know which way it's going to go, I don't even know who to pick. If Tatum loses and gets called up to the main roster, that would be great and it would be acceptable. I don't have any belief that's going to happen. There was a while where I believed, okay, they had Paxley lose the title back to Jane, and that way they're going to rebuild that match for Stand and Deliver where Tatum wins, gets the coronation, and then is NXT Women's Champion. And they actually run with her at the top of the company, the most popular woman on the brand, when she really does get pushed. But it doesn't look like that's happening because of what's going down with Soul and Zarya. So where does that leave Paxley for Stand and Deliver? I don't know. So I'm going to have Tatum win this. It's going to be my prediction. The confidence level is very low. And I don't know what that says for Izzy if she does lose the title so quickly after winning it to the person that she was feuding with. Like, does Paxley really need to win this strap on this show? If this match was at Stand and Deliver and it was going to be a big crowning achievement for Tatum, it would make a lot more sense. But to do it on this show after the title has already changed hands so many times, it's really confusing. And if Tatum loses this and does not get called up to the main roster, then what is left for her? That would be really problematic. Jada Parker is going to fight Blake Monroe in a street fight. A lot happened on NXT. Monroe cut a promo on Parker saying she expected to feel disrespect and rage for everything that has happened over the last few weeks. Instead, Blake realized Jada needs her presence to be relevant. Monroe said she's the conversation, the controversy, and the standard in NXT. Everything she does and says creates news because everyone obsesses over her. She said people love to hate Blake more than they actually love Jada. All facts. Seriously. Tell me when she's telling lies about that. Monroe said the division revolves around her, and as charity, she would share the spotlight with Parker. Jada interrupted, basically proving Blake's point. She said Blake has created a fantasy world, feeling like she needs to convince everyone she's important, all because she's insecure. Parker said she's the definition of relevance and all eyes are always on her, even if she doesn't care that they're paying attention. She claimed Monroe has always been a supporting character, aiming for a starring role, scared of fading into irrelevancy. Jada said, when you peel it all away, all that's left is Blake being a mediocre bitch. Parker then won a brief brawl with Hypnotic. This was probably a bit stronger on paper than it was executed on TV. Both of them are solid promos, but they were oil and water trying to go back and forth. They mix well physically. There's something about them working a program on the mic that just feels a bit off. I've said many times before, scripting Parker is a death knell for her. The lines were solid here, but she is so much better when she's able to improv and speak out of her chest, off the cuff, not scripted, trying to recite and remember things. None of this should matter too much in terms of their back and forth. It's almost certainly going to come to an end Saturday, and despite any hiccups, they did build plenty of heat for their match. Parker referring to Mariah May's former positioning was really smart, as was Monroe pointing out that she's always the conversation whenever she appears on TV, because there's an entire faction of wrestling fans who breathe right now to hate on her just because she left AEW for WWE. An hour later, Blake had changed clothes, wearing all black. She appeared on the announce table congratulating Jada for getting down to her core, challenging her to a street fight. Jada came out, went after Blake, only for them to be separated by Hank Tank and Hill, who had just finished their match. The stipulation was necessary considering the way they went at each other here, and it made sense why Izzy and Tatum didn't get one, because all three women's matches would have operated in somewhat similar fashion. I was going to say after the opening segment, but particularly after this follow-up, it's definitely starting to feel like a redo of the Jordan Grace feud, which you'll remember ended with that kind of silly-looking but decent weapons match. This feud should be the one with the North American title involved. I saw people talking about Parker creaming Monroe in the promo battle. I think smart fans even forget wrestlers are booked to win and lose confrontations the same way they win and lose matches. Parker was stronger than Monroe here, purposefully, to drive Blake into wanting a stipulation. But anyone suggesting that Blake was not strong on her own promo is being disingenuous. She was great also. I presume the idea is that Blake comes out on top when they fight because she cannot go to a dark place twice in a row against baby faces and lose both times. This would absolutely kill her woman from hell gimmick to lose to Grace and then Parker and be sitting there without a title and nothing to stand on. Blake absolutely needs to win this match, and I have Monroe beating Parker. Hopefully it's a way in which Jada can be excused and she can move over and do something else. And lastly, the expected main event, Joe Hendry defending the NXT Championship against Ricky Saints. Bourne and Joe Hendry put each other over backstage, with Miles teasing Joe when Hendry said that he wished he was deaf so he didn't have to listen to Saints' planned segment. Bourne actually did that quite well. Fun little segment between them. The main event was the Ricky Saints experience, with Saints mocking Hendry's gimmick. He's completely unable to sing or play guitar, so it was clearly done in that kind of manner, purposefully bad. He actually had better production with a laser light show surrounding him in the ring. The idea was for him to be half Hendry, half rock concert, but all bad, because both of those guys can actually play guitar and sing, and Saints can't do either of those things. Saints even requested a new guitar at one point, but when a stagehand put his arm into the picture and gave it to him, the assistant would not let go as Saints tried to grab it. It was obviously Hendry, who broke the instrument over Ricky's back and was prepared to hit a standing ovation until Vanity Project came to Saints' rescue. Bourne ran out, even the sides. Hendry did a fallaway slam of one heel into the other two. Then Hendry threw Saints out of the ring into the pile ringside. The faces spun together at the end, paying off the earlier segment that we talked about, where Bourne gave Hendry a hard time for the deaf comment. This was all solid. Chaotic closings always raise the rent, and this definitely accomplished that. The main problem is that Saints wore out the mocking gimmick about 60 to 90 seconds after he started playing, but it went on and on for another 3, 4, 5 minutes. There was never a stanza or chorus in the song that was particularly cutting and insulting to Hendry. So it ultimately didn't deliver anything other than painting Ricky as annoying, which we already knew that he was. Now, don't get me wrong, that worked. He was so purposefully terrible that it got heat. But it would have been nice if he actually insulted Hendry as part of the segment while he was getting heat for being terrible. All in all, this was not the greatest build to a main event for a PLE. Hendry just won the title in that ladder match. Maybe it was a one-off moment, and they're planning to bring Hendry up after WrestleMania, so they're doing this just to give him an NXT title first. I don't really see Saints winning this right away. He is so much better working for under than he is as champion. So they got to figure out a way for Hendry to come out on top here, yet still protect Saints to a degree. Do they run this as a 3-way with Paige, a 4-way with D'Angelo at Stand and Deliver? I don't know. I mean, we talked about it a year ago. The men's division in NXT was barren, but it at least had Obafemi, Javon Evans, and Trick Williams. All three of them got called up, And now your big names in this division are Joe Hendry, whose 15 minutes of fame, frankly, were up a long time ago. I know fans still cheer for him. I'm just telling you my, projection of everything. Ricky Saints, who has not hit as well as everyone hoped he would, coming over to NXT. Ethan Page, who has been incredible, but just got embarrassed by Miles Bourne and was in the mid-card segment for far too long. And then D'Angelo, whose return has been completely botched by creative. That's your men's main event scene right now in NXT. And that is not something that's going to sell tickets to premium live events, particularly something like Stand and Deliver, though, again, it is being held in a tiny venue, not on WrestleMania weekend. I don't believe this is the reason why, but it's certainly not helping, and the women really should be main eventing that show anyway. But again, this is what we have for the main event of Vengeance Day. I'm going to predict Hendry retaining the title. And ultimately, this show is going to need to over-deliver more than any NXT premium live event since they were actually using the 2.0 branding. Because that was the last time I was less enthused going into a PLE. They're holding it in Orlando at the Performance Center. It was sudden, booked weeks after Valentine's Day, which is usually around when the show airs. They had a women's title match on the Go Home show as opposed to this program. They have that low-card men's match at the start. It's awesome that there's more women's matches than men because the women's matches are actually interesting. But the builds, as I said, for Lonnie and Lola, weak. Izzy and Tatum, a little bit better. Jada and Blake, up and down. So I'm going into the show, and in terms of a pre-show expectation grade, which is what I was getting to here, I'm at a B, man. I'm at an 85, a flat B. I have pretty much no expectations for this being anything other than solid and entertaining. And if they do that, then they'll get an 85 or an 86 on the post-show grade. I don't see this having any ceiling higher than a B+. If they prove me wrong and this show just rocks the house, then more credit to NXT and more credit to Shawn Michaels. We have doubted them before, and they have proved us wrong many times. But as you all know, Silver King is an optimist when it comes to NXT. And going into this show, I'm certainly not being a pessimist, but my expectations are managed, is the best way to put it. So an 85, a B, that is my expectation grade. As always, we will publish pre- and post-show polls on our social media accounts at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. Not only can you vote in those polls, which we will discuss through on our bonus episode this week, your NXT Vengeance Day instant analysis. That podcast will come out Saturday night as soon as this show goes off the air. On social media, though, at Getting Overcast, not only can you vote in the polls, you can get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all that good stuff on YouTube. When you subscribe there, you can listen to the show and you can watch full-length video interviews as well. On the way out, let me also remind you here at Getting Over,
It's all about the fight.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating. On Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And also, don't forget,
I happen to love the number 5.
hope you do as well. For $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. You support us financially. We will continue delivering performance-enhancing audio into your ear holes. That is it for today. As mentioned, we will be back Saturday with your NXT Vengeance Day instant analysis. Tuesday will be our next WWE episode, and same bat time, same bat channel next Thursday. We'll be talking NXT, AEW Revolution Ultimate Preview, and most likely some TNA as well. This is the Silver King signing off, leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.